The rich world's financial system is in cardiac arrest, and politicians, in America at least, are standing over the patient arguing about the best means of resuscitation. I'm joined by two guests today, an influential New York economist who predicted this kind of massive economic shock 2 years ago, and a former investment banker turned economic commentator. Whatever the fate of the U.S. bailout plan, is it too late to avoid another Great Depression? Oliver Cam and Nouriel Roubini in New York, welcome both to Hard Talk.
Thank you.
Nouriel Roubini, let me start with you. President Bush says that the Congress must pass this bailout plan for America's banks, or the economic consequences will be painful and lasting. Do you see it that way?
No, I don't see it that way. A plan has to be passed, but this plan was flawed. It was essentially a bailout for Wall Street, for the reckless investors and bankers, was not designed properly, was a case of privatizing profits and socializing the losses, and that's why so many Congress people, both Democrats and Republicans, voted against it. This is really socialism for the rich, the well-connected, and Wall Street. So something has to be passed, but a very different plan from the one that was proposed by the Treasury Department of the United States.
So you're saying that when this plan comes back to the Congress in a few hours' time, a few days' time at the very most, it should be thrown out?
It should be substantially revised. There is one key element of the plan, buying toxic assets, but there are other two things that are important. You need to recapitalize the banks. That means that the government should be injecting public capital and expect matching capital from the current shareholders. And then you have to take these assets and you have to reduce the face value of them, because there are millions of houses that are going to lose their homes. They are debt burden, so you need debt reduction. So you do the three things: taking the assets off the balance sheet, recapitalizing the banks, reducing the debt burden. And this plan does only the first one, therefore is a flawed plan.
Oliver Cam, do you see it that way? Do you see this as socialism being brought into the financial system in the United States?
Yes, I have a lot of sympathy with what Professor Roubini has said. It was a flawed plan. However, it was the plan that was on offer, and it has clearly shaken financial market confidence that politicians rejected it. And I'm not certain Republican congressmen were fully aware of the consequences for financial confidence of what would happen. But the most fundamental flaw of the plan, I think, was that it operated indirectly. The problem with the financial system is that banks need to be recapitalized. This was an indirect way of doing it, by buying toxic assets from the banks, and there is no obvious way that the government can value these assets any more than the banks can. If they buy them too cheaply, then it won't have the desired effect of stimulating the wholesale lending market.
And Nouriel Roubini, what you've outlined is a different sort of plan. It's clearly going to take days, weeks, maybe even months to be drawn together, because you're talking about something very complex. Do you think the markets can wait that long when there is such an amount of fear in the marketplace, and when, frankly, the banks are not lending to each other and the capital markets have frozen up?
You're correct that the capital markets have frozen up and there is now panic in the financial system, but they had a couple of weeks to design a proper plan, and they've not done it. And if they want to do a better one, they still have time to do it. So the problem with Congress is they want just to sign something, go home and campaign for the election. So they've done a rush job, and they've designed a poor plan that doesn't resolve the fundamental problem of the financial system. Stock markets were falling in Europe, around the world, in the U.S. by 3, 4, 5% yesterday, even before this plan was turned down. That means that the market has already said that this is not a good plan. So if you have a lousy plan that doesn't resolve the fundamental problem, it's better not having any plan, even if, of course, the collateral damage to financial market right now is very severe. We have time to do it right.
But what if more banks go under? You've said yourself that the two remaining large investment banks, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, are profoundly vulnerable. More huge financial institutions could go under while you insist on the purity of what you say is a better plan.
But what's happening right now in financial market is that the LIBOR and other spreads for banks are so wide because no counterparty is safe. Nobody trusts nobody else. No bank is safe at this point. So what you need to do in a plan is to do a triage between the banks that are going to let go because they are insolvent and those that are distressed but with public liquidity and public capital and private capital, they're going to be able to save. Right now you have the rotten apples together with the good apples, and the rotten apples are infecting the good apples, and in the basket you have no idea which is what. The first step of any plan should be, let's decide which bank should be let go, let's close them down, and let's concentrate on the good ones, and let's recapitalize and fix those problems. What's happening right now in financial market is it's a total panic. Even the most trusted counterparty are not receiving any liquidity, any lending from other ones because you don't know who's going to be next. When the sixth largest bank in the U.S. has gone belly up, Wachovia, when the largest SNL in the U.S., WAM, has gone belly up, any institution can collapse. So at least you have clarity and transparency, the panic is going to continue.
Just to be clear, are you saying you believe more of these crucial financial institutions will go belly up in the next few days and weeks? Because you are known as a prophet of doom, if I can put it that way. Do you see the doom intensifying?
I see it, but it's not just me. At this point, there is a recognition that there are several hundred financial institutions in the United States, and I would say even Europe, that are insolvent. And any financial crisis, you start resolving it when you figure out which banks are insolvent, and the faster you close them down, the easier is the resolution of the crisis. The problem with Japan was that a decade-long financial and economic stagnation because they created a convoy system of zombie banks and zombie corporations that were kept alive, they were not restructured, they didn't close those they had to close, and therefore the rot spread for a decade long. The first step of any resolution of a financial crisis is to figure out which ones survive and which ones don't. It's going to happen. It's not just myself. It's clear there are several hundred banks in the U.S. that have to be shut down. The sooner you do it, the better is the problem resolved.
Oliver Kahn, we've just heard Dr. Doom, as Professor Roubini has been called by the New York Times not so long ago. We've just heard him say several hundred banks will have to go to the wall. That's the only way to deal with this in the United States. Let's talk Europe, because we have seen this spread, the contagion spread, obviously in the UK, but in Belgium as well, in Iceland, Germany. How bad is it going to get in Europe?
I think it will get very messy indeed. I'm not in a position to comment on Professor Roubini's forecast for the United States, but it will get very bad indeed. The crucial point is that capital markets have seized up, wholesale lending markets have seized up, because it's inherent in the banking system that there are what economists call problems of asymmetric information. If you're a bank, you know less about the loan you're extending than the borrower of the use to which it will be put, and once you've extended the loan, you know less than the market. I beg your pardon, the bank knows more than the market about the quality of that loan, and therefore banks won't lend to each other because of this system of contagion. The fundamental issue is to put confidence back into the banking system, which is the most important thing that central banks and governments can do in Europe.